There is a healing recorded in the Gospel of Mark where Jesus does something almost no sermon ever slows down to notice. He touches a man who cannot hear, places his fingers directly on him, and then speaks a single Aramaic word, "Ephatha," be opened. But the healing did not happen through the word alone. It happened through touch and sound working together, a combination Jesus used again and again, and almost no one has ever asked why he never used just one or the other. Read through the healing accounts in the Gospels carefully, and a pattern emerges that most sermons skip entirely. Jesus rarely healed with words alone, floating a command across a distance like a magic spell. He touched people. He placed His fingers in a deaf man's ears. He put clay on a blind man's eyes with His own hands. He took a dead girl by the hand before speaking to her, and in nearly every case, the touch came paired with a spoken word. In Aramaic, the everyday language of Galilee, not the formal Hebrew of the temple, not the Greek that would later record these events. This pairing was never incidental. In the Aramaic understanding Jesus operated within, sound was believed to carry determination and vibration, a frequency capable of shaping the reality it named the instant it was spoken with full presence. But sound alone, without a physical point of contact, has nowhere to land. Touch is what grounds a frequency inside a body, establishing the direct pathway sound needs to travel through, rather than simply passing by unabsorbed. This is why Jesus so consistently combined the two. Touch created the circuit. The spoken word carried the current. The word at the center of this healing mechanism was Nura, pronounced Nora, meaning light, not sunlight, but the luminous, divine substance. The Gospel of Philip describes as the true material beneath all visible creation. Jesus understood His own body as a conductor of this light, and touch was the method by which that light moved from him into another person, while the spoken word directed where inside that person the light needed to go. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 7, a deaf and mute man is brought to Jesus. He does not simply speak a command from a distance. He puts His fingers into the man's ears, touches his tongue, looks up, sighs, and speaks a single Aramaic word, "Ephatha," be opened. Immediately the man's ears are opened and his tongue is loosened. Notice how deliberately this healing unfolds. Jesus does not perform it in front of the crowd that brought the man to him. He takes him aside privately, away from the noise and expectation of onlookers, as though the transmission itself required a quieter field to complete. Only once alone does he touch the man's ears and tongue directly, the precise points where the blockage lived, and only then does he speak. Touch located the exact place Nura needed to travel. The word released it there. This single detail, the deliberate privacy before the touch, before the word, tells you something important about how this mechanism actually works. Nura does not move well through performance or spectacle. It moves through presence, the quiet, undivided attention of one person fully focused on another. To pronounce Nura correctly, Nora is believed in this understanding to awaken something ancient inside the one who speaks or receives it, a remembering of an original luminous design that fear, illness, and disconnection had covered but never actually extinguished. This is the deeper mechanism behind why JESUS's healings so consistently combined physical contact with spoken sound rather than relying on either alone. Consider the healing of the blind man in Bethsaida, recorded shortly after the healing of the deaf man in the same gospel. Jesus takes the blind man by the hand, leads him out of the village privately, and puts His own saliva on the man's eyes before laying hands on him and asking what he sees. This was not a random ritual gesture. Saliva, touch, and breath were understood in the Aramaic tradition as extensions of a person's own Nura, physical carriers of the same light present in the breath and body. Jesus was not performing theater. He was completing a circuit, transmitting Nura through direct contact and then directing its movement through spoken instruction. This is also why Jesus so often asked people whether they believed before healing them. This was never a theological test of doctrinal correctness. It was a question about receptivity, whether the person's own inner state was open enough to receive the Nura being transmitted, or whether fear and doubt had closed the circuit before the current could arrive. A body braced in disbelief resists the same transmission. A body relaxed in trust receives instantly. This is why he could not perform certain healings in Hi's own hometown. Not because Hi's power had diminished, but because the collective disbelief around him had closed the circuit His touch and voice depended on. Think about what this reveals about healing as Jesus actually practiced it. Not a distant miracle performed on a passive recipient, but a living transmission requiring to open points of contact. His touch, establishing the physical pathway, his voice directing the light precisely where it needed to go, and the recipient's own openness determining how fully that light could move. This was never magic performed to him. It was Nura moving through him. This is also why Jesus told His followers they would do even greater things than he had done, not through borrowed authority granted from outside, but through the same Nura already present in their own bodies, waiting to be conducted through touch and directed through voice, exactly as he had demonstrated. This was never a private ability reserved for one man in history. It was a repeatable mechanism, and there is one more layer to it, one that changes how you might understand your own capacity to help the people around you. We are only beginning to uncover it. If this teaching already feels this deep, imagine having a full guide with deeper explanations of JESUS's true teachings in Aramaic. You'll find the link to the study guide in the comments. And the best is yet to come in the next chapters. You'll discover what could change everything for you, because there is one healing in the Gospels that reverses the entire mechanism we have just described. And it may be the most important detail in this whole teaching. A woman suffering from a chronic illness for 12 years pushes through a crowd pressing in around Jesus. She does not ask him to touch her. She does not wait for him to speak a word over her. She simply reaches out and touches the edge of Hi's robe, believing that contact alone would be enough. And immediately, the bleeding stops. What happens next is the detail almost every retelling skips past too quickly. Jesus stops walking and asks who touched him. His own followers find the question strange, pointing out that a crowd is pressing against him from every direction. But Jesus insists, saying he felt power go out from him. This is not a vague figure of speech. It is a description of Nura, pronounced Nora, actually leaving Hi's body and moving into hers, triggered not by Hi's own spoken word, but by her own reaching, her own belief completing the circuit from her side rather than His. This single detail changes everything about how you should understand the mechanism we have been describing. Touch and word were not always required together because Jesus alone held all the power in every encounter. Sometimes, the recipient's own faith was strong enough to draw Nura out through contact alone, without a single word needing to be spoken by Him at all. The circuit did not always begin on His end. Sometimes it began entirely on the other side, initiated by someone desperate enough, believing enough, to reach out and take what they needed rather than waiting to be given it. Consider what this means for your own life, right now, in whatever situation currently feels beyond your reach. The Gospels do not describe a single template for how Nura moves. Sometimes Jesus touched first and spoke second. Sometimes he simply spoke across a distance. And at least once, someone else initiated the entire transmission simply by reaching toward him with enough conviction that the current moved without Him, even consciously directing it. This tells you something remarkable about your own capacity to draw on the same source, not only to receive healing passively, but to actively reach for it with the same conviction that woman carried through a crowded street. There is a reason this particular story unsettled the religious authorities of that era more than almost any other healing recorded, and it has everything to do with who is allowed to initiate access to the divine. Here is why the story of the woman who touched JESUS's robe was so quietly dangerous to the religious structure surrounding him. In the temple system of that era, access to healing, forgiveness, and divine favor ran through an official channel: priests, sacrifices, ritual purification, and specific locations sanctioned by religious authority. A person did not simply reach out and take what they needed. They waited, they paid, they followed the prescribed steps, and they received what the system decided to grant them, when the system decided to grant it. This woman bypassed every one of those steps. She did not consult a priest. She did not offer a sacrifice. She reached directly toward Nura itself, moving through Jesus as its most direct conductor. and received exactly what the entire temple apparatus was structured to control access to. This is precisely why Jesus did not quietly let the moment pass once he noticed what had happened. He stopped, he asked who had touched him, and he publicly named what she had done. Faith, direct and unmediated, drawing healing to herself without asking anyone's permission first. This is the same pattern that made JESUS's entire ministry so threatening to institutions built on controlled access to the divine. If Nura can be reached directly, through simple, sincere contact and belief, then the entire priestly apparatus standing between ordinary people and healing becomes structurally unnecessary. This is not a minor footnote in the story. It is the reason the woman trembled when Jesus asked who had touched him, fully expecting to be publicly condemned for bypassing the system, and instead being told that her own faith, not the system, had made her well. Consider how consistently this pattern repeats throughout JESUS's ministry. Time and again, he moved healing outside the walls that were supposed to contain it. Touching people the temple system had declared unclean, speaking directly to those the religious hierarchy had taught to wait quietly for official permission before approaching the divine. Each time, the message was the same. Nura, Nora, the light already present within every person, was never something requiring institutional authorization to access. It was already reachable, already responsive, already waiting for anyone willing to reach toward it with genuine conviction. This is precisely why an institution built around controlled access could not simply ignore stories like this one. It had to be carefully managed, framed as an isolated exception rather than a repeatable pattern, a special case rather than an open invitation. But the text itself preserves the truth plainly. Jesus did not create a closed circuit reserved only for himself to operate. He demonstrated an open one, available to anyone desperate enough, believing enough, to reach for it directly. Right now, you might be asking yourself, why am I only discovering this truth now? Don't worry. We thought about that. We're here to help you go deeper with a guide, made for this journey. The link is in the comments. Here is the layer that ties everything together, and it explains exactly why Jesus never treated healing as a private ability he alone possessed. After demonstrating this mechanism repeatedly, both initiating it himself and receiving it initiated by someone else's faith, He sent his own followers out with a direct instruction to lay hands on the sick and heal them, using the same combination of touch and word he had modeled from the beginning. This was never framed as a rare gift reserved for one extraordinary man in history. It was framed as a transferable practice, something ordinary people could learn simply by understanding what Nura actually is and how it moves. This is why the earliest followers of Jesus continued healing long after he was gone, not through some borrowed magic word repeated mechanically, but through the same understanding he had demonstrated: contact establishing the pathway, conviction directing the current, and genuine belief on either side completing the circuit. The mechanism was never unique to JESUS's biology or bloodline. It was a principle available to anyone willing to approach another person with full presence rather than distraction, and speak with the same total conviction he brought to every single healing. Consider what this means for the people already in your life who are struggling right now. A friend carrying grief, a family member facing illness, someone quietly hurting behind a calm expression. Nura was never meant to remain locked inside ancient texts describing a man who lived 2,000 years ago. It was described as something you carried too, something conducted through your own hands the moment they rest gently on someone in genuine care, directed by words spoken with real conviction rather than empty routine. This does not require special training or ordination. It requires only what Jesus himself required every time: presence undivided by distraction, touch offered without hesitation, and words spoken as though they carry actual weight, because in this understanding, they genuinely do. The woman who touched his robe did not need permission either. She simply reached, believing fully, and the current moved. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation. So how do you actually begin practicing this? Not as an abstract idea, but as something real you can offer someone today. whether they know the name Nura or not. Begin with your own body. Each morning, place a hand gently over any area holding tension or discomfort and speak the word slowly. Nura, Nora, light, the luminous substance already present beneath whatever discomfort currently sits there. Let the touch and the word arrive together, not separately. The same pairing Jesus modeled in every healing he performed. When someone in your life is struggling, offer this same combination consciously. Rest a hand gently on their shoulder or hand. Hold full presence rather than a distracted, hurried touch. And speak words of genuine encouragement with real conviction rather than a rehearsed phrase. You are not performing a ritual. You are completing a circuit, exactly as Jesus demonstrated. Touch establishing the pathway, word directing where the light needs to go. Some days, this will feel natural and immediate. Other days, you may feel nothing shift at all, and that is not failure. Even Jesus withdrew regularly to restore his own connection before continuing his work. The practice is not about guaranteeing a visible result every time. It is about consistently offering presence, touch, and conviction together, and trusting that Nora moves in its own time, according to its own wisdom, rather than yours. Remember, too, that you do not always need to wait to be the one giving this. Like the woman who reached for Jesuas's robe, you are also allowed to reach. To ask someone you trust to place a hand on your shoulder and speak a genuine word of encouragement over you when you are the one struggling. Nura moves both directions, and receiving it with open belief is just as much a part of this practice as offering it. This is not a one-time technique to master and forget. It is a daily practice of remembering that Nura moves through ordinary hands and ordinary words, offered with real presence, exactly as it always has, from Jesus's own hands 2,000 years ago to yours today. Just a quick reminder that transformation guides for a fuller life are waiting for you, right there in the comments. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, WRITE, the word restoration in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal. Thank you for sharing this moment of ancient wisdom with us. Until the next revelation, walk in peace, walk in freedom, and walk in the power of Nurabe Open.